Good afternoon and welcome to our council and committee meeting. It's a really exciting meeting that we're going to have because we have our deputy clerk back, and we are very pleased to have her back. And she's been away in training, and now she's going to conduct the meeting. So, Deputy Clerk.
Thank you, through the chair. That's a nice welcome back. I appreciate it. It's nice to be back. Just before we begin, I would like to remind everyone that our meetings are web streamed and televised. And for those in attendance, I ask that you ensure your phones are on silence mode. Councillor Sonnenberg is not available tonight to be in attendance. We do not have any changes to the agenda. The only one that we would like to propose, it doesn't require a mover or seconder, is just a little change to the order, and that would be to request the deputation to commence right now. So if council or committee is okay with that, then I would like to invite Mr. Sadler to the podium to speak to his deputation regarding Bill 148, the impacts of Bill 148. And Mr. Sadler, just a reminder that there is a strict 10-minute time limit, and Chair Wells will remind you when there is 1 minute remaining.
Good day, Council. I recognize that Bill 148 is a provincial bill, but the consequences of this bill are going to land heavily on every municipality. What I'm going to read to you is the conclusion and resolution to a much larger article that's available online at the www.thesadlerpost.ca. It's titled Bill 148, Non-Fictional Consequences. Essentially, Bill 148 is a result of overspending on the provincial government, and they are extremely not only in debt, but continue to deficit finance. This is a bill they look at as one way out of deficit financing. On the other hand, as I indicate, this Liberal government has tunnel vision, is trapped in the image that Bill 148 is their pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, with a massive increase in income tax and HST revenue. As an aside, if you look at the 2016 budget, the projections ahead for 2017-2018 show the largest increases in income tax and HST this province has ever seen. Crap. Sorry. My apologies. The political spin to sell the legislation is a fairy tale with improbable endings. This regressive legislation has been crafted to benefit union organizations which have been losing members, not society as a whole at any income level. Raising the minimum wage rate is not a solution for the cost of living. You cannot legislate prosperity, but you can demolish it. This legislation will create an aggressive price inflation spiral on every commodity and service. The direct and immediate labor consequences will be increased workplace stress, hundreds of thousands of layoffs, and additional pressure on social services and food banks. Bill 148 will accelerate the ongoing exodus of companies leaving the province and expedite the decision to close companies' permanent job losses in large numbers. The root causes have to be tackled, which have within less than a generation created disparity and a lack of opportunity, which has trapped those under 30 years of age into an unprecedented scenario where 50% are still living at home. The current cost of living is a direct result of government absorption of ever higher percentages of income, a death by taxation spiral. The expensive policies, unrestrained hiring, and excessive wages have led to hyper-taxation and massive borrowing. The current path is unsustainable, a bankrupt economic model. Ontario should not become the premier example of self-destruction and how not to govern a jurisdiction. The Association of Municipalities has warned that new costs will shift into higher property taxes. Social services will require substantial increases to fund and keep up with crisis demands. Bill 148 is not just a revenue generator. Not all fallout costs can be downloaded to other levels of governments and institutions. As a result, billions in additional taxes will be needed as provincial departments absorb new prices. For example, school boards will need additional funding, or services such as cafeterias will be closed. But in fact, there's only one taxpayer. Additional money will come out of paychecks. The NAFTA agreement currently under negotiation is essentially about labor supported by exchange rate. By far, the primary benefactor has been Mexico, which has used this agreement as a nation builder, relocating businesses and millions of jobs from the USA and Canada. Unfortunately, development of social improvements in Mexico has been slowed by rapid population growth, stressing resources, and a deadly drug culture. Their solution has been to export both of them. Raising employment standards in Mexico quickly will be resisted as a loss of trade advantage. The new agreement without a trade war will require compromises in Canadian and U.S. labor laws. It is essential that this government shelve Bill 148 until the results of the NAFTA negotiations are known. The resulting agreement is expected to require significant changes to existing labor laws and standards. It is not reasonable to rush through legislation which is both obsolete and will lead to substantial tax increases in an economy losing full-time jobs. As you're aware, they are now striking at CAMI because of jobs going to Mexico. 25% have already gone. Further, the interim time provides an opportunity to study and seek solutions to the root causes of income disparity, the ongoing exodus of companies, the loss of full-time jobs, and the rise of precarious part-time jobs. As a side note, neither the federal nor provincial Liberal governments are concerned with borrowing or their debt levels. Yet today, with record low interest rates, according to Toronto Sun article, the interest payments exceed the operating budgets of the Canadian Armed Forces, plus Aboriginal Affairs. It's really, the interest is the third biggest department in the federal government. And he's borrowing $30 billion a year. And she's borrowing $20 billion a year, just to keep the doors open. My point here is a resolution. The municipality of Norfolk County strongly supports the Association of Municipalities of Ontario in expressing a concern of the negative consequences of Bill 148, leading to a loss of employers, to a loss of jobs in large numbers, and a downloading of costs onto municipalities, which will flow into property tax increases. Certainly, if you have any questions, and I would really recommend that you read that full article. It is very scary, but it is reality.
Thank you very much for your presentation, and the first person to speak will be Mr. Mayor. Do you wish to speak now?
Well, Mr. Chair, I don't have any questions for Ron, but and if there are no questions, I want to say, first of all, I have read this submission by Mr. Sadler, certainly in a draft form, but it's pretty close to what's in front of us, and I intend to read this again. He has done a tremendous amount of work, Mr. Chair, and I want to thank him for it. And I first would like to move that we receive his deputation as information.
Thank you very much. You've heard the motion on the floor. All in favor? Or you wish to speak to the motion? Sorry.
I'd like to ask the deputation a question.
Oh, you can do that.
That's all right. Sorry.
So you go right ahead.
Okay,
We will
thank you,
put that
Mr. Chair.
motion after we ask the questions.
Okay, through you to the deputation. From what I'm reading here, it's just a money grab for the government to make money on the, say, income tax side or whatever side of it is like that.
Both HST and income tax, they're projecting massive increases.
Yeah, now, when I look at some of the figures here, I see from October the 1st, they're going to have the rate at $11.60, and then January 1st, 2018, they're going to jump it up to $14, so that's $2.40 more per hour. Basically, the person will take home $96 per week pre-tax. So have you done calculations on how much more tax the government will receive on?
Yeah, it's in the
dollar
larger
amount?
article. It works out to a 16% hike in income tax is what they're projecting in their budget figures.
So that's what they'll be
Just
clawing
in 1
back
year.
from the minimum wage side
Yep.
of it?
No, that's total. Okay, here's the issue, and the scary part is not, and the fear also from the municipalities is not the people who are making minimum wage. That's actually almost 30% of our population. is making less than $20,000 a year. It's from a wage push tsunami. And that is where companies and public services look at, I struggled my way up as an individual. And in the last 7 years of working and gaining experience in my company, I'm now making $17 an hour. I deserve that $17 an hour. The idiot walking the door who doesn't know a damn thing, you're going to pay him 15? I want 21, and that's a fair request. And that's what they're banking on. It will just fly through everything.
Okay.
And it'll hit corporations will be making more money too. That is the big ones, because you'll take Loblaws. They won't pass all these increases through, just the increases. They'll look at their ROI and they'll say, well, there's a chance we can pop that, and we can blame the government for that. So again, up goes their profits. It's more income tax from the corporations, those particular corporations too. I'm being driven to write this from having friends in the farm side, concern about family and families being broken up, that to get a decent job, you're going to have to leave the country, which my son has done.
Okay, and then my next question would be, I see that you have in your article here some comments from the asparagus farmer of Ontario.
Yeah, Mr. Wall.
Yeah, and I've spoken with a few people that were planning on putting in asparagus in Norfolk County now, because it's basically a 10-year business plan. And now they're having second thoughts because of this. So, as I understand it, Chile's a big importer to Canada, and even Chile outsources some of their labor to Bolivia. So, I guess my question to you would be, do you think this will make an underground economy for farm laborers, where they'll pay people cash instead of running them through the system?
No, because you have to be able to deduct the costs against your income, or you're going to burn the whole system. In the States, there's some of that occurring. Just to mention the side, California raised their minimum wage and essentially wiped out within 1 year the asparagus crop. It's now all coming in pretty much from Mexico. They wiped out like 90% of it, gone in 1 year. And there are tens of thousands of acres were in asparagus, thousands of jobs involved. It's a very labor-intensive process. Gone. This is huge. It's the most harebrained scheme, union promoted scheme that has ever come across the desks of the provincial government. The situation is they are not looking at where the problems are for their deficit financing. Instead, they're just shooting in a variety of directions and listening to really the wrong people. The union membership has been dropping significantly, and that's because companies are leaving. I spoke with Unifor yesterday and in Cambridge, their offices there, actually Kitchener, and said to them that waving flags at the entrances of the Cami plant is not the answer. They already pulled the terrain out of there. You lost that contract. What you got to do is find out what is upsetting them and resolve that issue. That's the approach you should take, whether they're going to listen to me or not. My concern is that what you're going to create is a cascade effect, and that has already been expressed to the Premier from the heads of Magna corporations, Toyota, that if this goes through, we're gone.
Thank you, Mr.
So we need as much pressure on the people in Parliament as possible, and that's why I'm asking for your resolution, because whatever is pushing them so far has been stronger than anybody else's commentary saying, hey, this is really, really wrong. This is bad legislation. So the more voices, I feel that at some point we can maybe reach the tipping point, and we are stronger than those people that, in fact, are saying it has to be done.
You finished, Councillor Height? Councillor Columbus, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Sadler, have you sent this document that you prepared to the opposition parties of the Ontario government?
That's the next step
and
after
the
I see
federal government?
people. The website is just getting finalized. For the next few days, it should be tweaked. It's accessible. It just doesn't look as nice as it could. And yeah, it's going to blow out from there to the members of Parliament. We have, unfortunately, now a compound effect. We got Bill 148, and now we also have the federal Liberals looking at a tax grab back from small business with their small business tax plan. It's just bam, bam. So, unfortunately, that's where we are. And as I said, to get out of it, we've got to back pressure. We've got to say, hey, whoa, this is wrong. Fortunately, some of the Liberal members of Parliament are actually saying that at this point federally, that this is not the approach to take. But again, that's another issue completely. 148 is going in for second reading sometime very soon, and could be law in November. So we don't have much time.
Finish, Councillor Columbus. Councillor Oliver, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Sadler, I was trying to understand the link you made also with the HST, and I guess perhaps I've seen it. You're not, and I'm not aware of the details, and I didn't see it in your report, but they're not actually increasing the HST rate. You're saying they'll be collecting more HST.
Exactly.
Because there will
It's
be labor
collection.
incorporated in the costs of those goods.
Absolutely.
Gotcha.
Labor and additional profit.
Thank you.
And your importers will jump on that as well. So let's say, for example, you're selling your particular product, apples, to the grocery store for $2 a bag. Everything jumps up, and in Canada it has to be $3 is their cost. They're not going to stay at $2. Phew, up she goes as well. It's a phenomenal deal for an importer.
Finish, Councillor Oliver. Any further questions to the deputation? If not, could we have a motion to receive the deputation? Councillor Oliver, Councillor Geisens. Yes. That's all. We need a seconder. And a second by Councillor Columbus. All in favor? Thank you very much for your deputation. Now,
Thank
Mayor
you very
Luke.
much. I appreciate your support.
You're on. Mayor Luke.
Thank you. I would like to propose, Mr. Chair, the following resolution from what we've heard at the deputation, and it goes as follows. I've given a copy to the clerk that Norfolk County strongly supports the Association of Municipalities of Ontario in expressing concern over the negative consequences of Bill 148 leading to the loss of employers, to the loss of jobs in large numbers, and a downloading of costs onto municipalities which will flow into property tax increases, and that a copy of the resolution be forwarded to Premier Kathleen Wynne, to the AMO Board of Directors, and to the Minister of Labor, Kevin Flynn. And if I may just, well, you want a seconder?
Could we have a seconder to get it on the floor, please? Second by Councillor Brunton.
And if I
Now
just
it's on the
may
floor.
make a comment, certainly this was a large topic of discussion at AMO, and the AMO certainly, on behalf of our 444 municipalities, has the same concern. When we were on our agriculture tour, certainly two of the farmers I talked to said, you know, it's just too much too fast. There's just so much of our costs are in labor. And, you know, if it's something that was phased over 3 or 5 years, we can plan, but it's really not, it's not going to solve the problem. It's going to create more than what it's going to solve. And I agree with that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome. Councillor Black?
Yes, I agree. It's the nice thing about the the tablets. It used to be the iPad, now it's the tablet. You can pull up these websites, and I'm just looking at the AMO website and their commentary on it, and they have an appendix provided with all their information and their recommendations. And I do support the motion that's on the floor. AMO is our representative to the provincial government. I agree with Mayor Luke that's maybe a little bit too fast. And there will be, it just seems that any government, including us, at this level, sometimes we don't always look at the negative impacts of our decisions and try to identify and mitigate those negative impacts. I'm just hoping that the provincial government are astute enough that they, through their various studies, because they have done many on this issue, that they know what those negative impacts will be and are prepared to mitigate them. And I would suggest that in order to do so, they're going to have to cough up a lot of money. So I rather doubt that that would be forthcoming. But anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you. Any further questions, comments? Councillor Oliver.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I certainly will support the mayor's motion. I didn't hear him specifically say we'd also have it circulated to our local MPP. Maybe that was his intent, and if not, perhaps that could be included. And the other thing I might ask for, Mr. Chair, if Mayor Luke and the seconder are okay with it, that this would also be circulated to our other SCORE partners. Again, we speak stronger when we speak together, and who knows, maybe they're dealing with it separately, but perhaps they don't have something like this that they've been able to look at. So if that's okay, I'd ask that be added.
Thank you. Is that right with that? You're all right? I see no further speakers. All those in favor of the motion? Motion is carried. And before we go on, I think the county manager wishes to speak on this issue as well. Another issue? Not on this issue. An introduction. Oh, an introduction. Okay. Mr. County Manager, you're on.
It is with great pleasure that I'd like to formally introduce to Norfolk County Council the newest member of the Norfolk family, Mr. Yakov Sluchenkov, who is now our General Manager of Employee and Business Services. Yakov joins us most recently from the Hamilton Police Service. He's had a series of increasingly senior positions in federal public sector organizations, provincial and municipal. He holds a master's degree in industrial relations from the University of Toronto and a business degree from York University. These are really exciting times, and Yakov comes to us with a lot of great ideas, energy, and enthusiasm. And I just hope you'll all join me in giving him a proper Norfolk County welcome.
On this, Councillor Black?
Just like to say, just looking at the three gentlemen over there, and they all sort of seem to fit together, and I know they're going to work really well together. It's a really good looking. Look at them; they're all smiling. They really look good. I expect lots of good things. Welcome.
Any further comments? The only comment I would like to make is, Councillor Black, I look over there and see the three lovely young ladies. Thank you, and welcome. All right, we are now going back to our agenda as printed, and we've looked after the no pecuniary interest, so we're all right there. We've done the changes to the agenda, and now we are going to have something from, not you. You go right ahead.
Thank you. Through the chair, now we have the consent section of the agenda. If any member of the committee wishes to discuss a consent item and/or ask questions upon it, please identify so now, and we will move that item to the top of the staff reports to be addressed first. Seeing none, then we need a mover and a seconder to the recommendations within the two staff reports.
Councillor Black. Councillor Oliver.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Both.
All right, so we have A mover and a seconder for both motions. Any discussion? Councillor Oliver.
Mr. Chair, this may be our only chance to discuss, and perhaps Mr. Baird or others would be bringing it up before this Roots to Roots event happens, but in case it doesn't get discussed at another time, I just think it's well worth council at least acknowledging that this is an exciting new event for our county. I know our own Tourism and Economic Development Department is involved, along with others, including the BIA and downtown businesses and so on. And if Toronto can have the TIFF, then we can have Roots to Roots. And I applaud those people that have organized this event. And unfortunately, I'll just be coming away from out of province that day, so may not be back in time to enjoy it. But I'm sure it will be a wonderful event. So congratulations to all the organizers.
Councillor Black, please.
And I guess if there were any questions, we do have the Executive Director of the Downtown Simcoe BIA, Mr. Jim McGimsey, here with us this afternoon. So if there were any questions about it, he could answer them.
Councillor Oliver.
I do have one, Mr. Chairman, if you'll
Please.
permit it.
You have the floor.
I see, Jim, that we're doing the street closure. Will there be are the films to be shown outside on the street? Will there be dancing in the streets while films are being shown in the Strand? Exactly what would be the format?
I don't understand that that's what they're being part of.
Come to the microphone.
I don't know specifically.
Okay.
I'm kind of outside of the organizing with Jim Carroll on my board and a representative of the BIA. So I'm here more in support of another item on the agenda. Yeah, the street closure, though, I don't believe is for outside filming experience. I think it's more just recognizing that they want to have some fanfare. So, I think part of highlighting something exciting in the downtown is also associated with closure. So, not knowing the full details, I suspect that it might be that.
And I believe you have some information on this, Ms. Darling?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, the special event application has been processed through Corporate Support Services. The intent of the road closure is because we expect large volume of attendance at the Strand Theatre in downtown Simcoe, so it's being closed only for a safety perspective. The event itself will be held indoors, but we want to just make sure that if there is, that we prohibit any traffic in the area because of the large volumes of individuals that will be coming into the Strand Theatre.
Further questions? Seeing none, all in favor of the two motions that we have in front of us? Motion is carried. Before we go to the next item, I do have a question with regard to Friday the 13th. Could I ask somebody if I could ask that question? And I think Ms. Ferris came to council and made a deputation asking that Friday the 13th be declared a community event. And I think we were to receive some kind of report on that. I'd just like to know how we are making out on that before the next, not for this Friday the 13th, but for our next Friday the 13th, please. And I think that would be you, Mr. Cridlin?
Yes, through the chair to Councillor Wells, to answer your question, Ms. Darlington and myself are scheduled to present that report probably by the end of November. We've met with all the groups, and we hope to get this Friday the 13th over with, learn a few things, fine-tune it, and it'll be back before the Christmas break.
That would be great, as long as it's before the next one so that they can plan as well.
Yeah, will be.
It's a very important event for Norfolk County and obviously for Port Dover, and it requires a lot of organization and a lot of planning, and a lot of money is paid out and brought in, so we appreciate that. All right, any further questions on that? Seeing none, I'll go back then to, we're not doing a closed session, are we? No closed session. Are we doing any presentations?
No.
No presentations? How about deputations?
We have
None of those either? Holy Christmas. Anybody like to move adjournment? All right, let's go with staff report, which deals with the capping program for natural gas. Who's looking after that?
We.
Ms. Robinson, would you like to speak, please?
Through the chairman to council, before you is a report for a proposal for the assessment of the maintenance and capping program for the natural gas supply wells. As council is well aware, we have had some issues of late. Those wells are not under our care and control. However, we are charged with the responsibility for public health in the area. Through this process, staff have become concerned that the current program is a very reactive program and not a holistic approach on a proactive basis moving forward. Staff do not believe that it is the responsibility of Norfolk County to move this forward. So we are suggesting, the report that we brought forward before you this evening is recommending that the county proceed with the proposal to do a review of the program. This report would give us sufficient information to be able to talk to other provincial and federal representatives in order to assist us in what we believe is likely a problem in this particular area and far exceeds the abilities financially as well as staff resources for Norfolk County, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Well, we just happen to have one for you. Councillor Brunton, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A few questions, I guess, through to you, Lee. One, what was the company name that capped the wells?
Through the chairman to council, the company that was engaged by the MNRF was Bradco.
And MNRF ordered that?
Through the chairman to council, there was two different situations that occurred, although not related to the report that's before you this evening. The first situation was an abandoned well that the MNRF, through their abandonment program, took responsibility for arranging for the capping of. The other well that was causing us concern, our understanding is that the MNRF ordered the owner of the well to do remedial work, and the remedial work was completed.
Okay, but at no time did Norfolk County pay the contractor. It was all the responsibility of the ministry and the contractor, correct?
Through the chairman to council, I can't speak to who paid who for what. I can speak to that Norfolk County did not pay the contractor to do any work, although the considerable amount of staff resources, time, overtime, excess time, etc. As council is aware, we were also authorized to engage a consultant to do some work and monitoring on behalf of the county. All of those were out-of-pocket expenses spent by the county to resolve the issue.
Okay, I guess, Mr. Chairman, if I may, I'm having a hard time digesting this, and I don't begrudge the people out there anyway in terms of the problems they've had. However, I did read, I believe it's Carr Hoskins the other day, had a memo on our iPad that indicated people that have problems out there are to call a number, which I believe is a ministry toll number. I haven't called it myself, but I believe they are the ministry responsible for problems out there. And I guess I keep trying to understand why we keep sticking our nose in there when it's not our problem. And again, I sympathize with the people that have a problem. They bought those properties. If they had gas wells on them, they live on them, rent on them, or whatever their arrangements are, it's the responsibility of the province and the landowners, the gas companies, but it's not Norfolk County. And if we continue to say, well, it's a health problem, people might breathe in this noxious gas or whatever, but there's a lot of health problems. I mean, I drive down the road every day and the cars are emitting fumes that I'm breathing in. I haven't complained about it, but I suppose we all have to put up with it. But again, I'm not saying to these people, suck it up. All I'm saying is I don't want to spend any more of the Norfolk County taxpayers' money to look after a problem that belongs to the province and some gas company and some private landowners. And I cannot support spending another nickel out there to deal with it. Thank you.
Do you wish to respond before I go to the next speaker?
Certainly. Through the
Please.
chairman to council. Councillor Brunton, staff fully concur with your position, which is why we've actually recommended that this be undertaken. Because we are charged through the health unit with being responsible for people's health, we have to respond to the situation. Although we are not responsible for the costs of addressing the problem, we are faced with the costs of responding to the problem. We are charged with that through the province. It is our responsibility, and we do have to expend taxpayer dollars to address it after it happens. Again, it goes back to the reactive approach. It happens, we then have to spend a lot of taxpayers' money to go out there to address it, to keep people safe, to block the roads, to allow access to that, to evacuate people from their homes, because that we are charged with. We are responsible for that. We fully concur. The number that's been provided by Clark is the Spills Action Center with respect to the Ministry of the Environment and Climate Change. They are required, everybody in the province is required to, if there is a spill, you are required to call it in and notify the ministry. The ministry then in turn notifies appropriate parties to respond to the spill. In this case, we would be notified through that because from a public health concern, if there is a health concern with respect to that, our health unit has to step up and address the situation. They also would be contacting people who would be responsible. So for example, the property owners or the MNRF if it's an abandoned well. That's how it's structured. So you were correct. We are not spending taxpayers' money to fix the problem. However, the way everything is currently structured, we're reacting to it. So every time something happens, we have to expend a lot of money to react to the problem from a public health point of view. The reason staff have brought this forward is because we don't think we should be spending any of the money to do that, but we need to be discussing with others who have the funds and have the ability to make that happen, why that this should be occurring, so that we're not spending the money for our health unit to address all of these problems that are outside the mandate of Norfolk County.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I'll agree to disagree. I'll leave it at that.
And I think you have every right to do that. Now, just so you know, the speakers list is as follows. Councillor Geisens, Councillor Oliver, Councillor Columbus, Councillor Height, and Councillor Oliver again. How did you get on there twice, Councillor Oliver? Okay. Councillor Geisens, please.
Thank you. I guess I want to understand something here. I'm looking at your recommendations, and on the bottom it says we should have the amount of $30,000 to $50,000 plus taxes be treated as a budget variance. And is this money that we are going to have to spend for the wells that we have capped, or is this something in case there's another well that we have to deal with?
Through the chairman to council, it is neither. What this is that this is money that would have a review of the current program given, and for lack of a better phrase, provide us the science that we need to take, the science and the data that we need to take to the province and to the federal government so that we can attempt to have this program reviewed, and so that we're not going to be expending money in the future. We need the technical data to support our case when we're talking to various ministries, the province, the federal government, etc. We need to have the supporting data. Without this study that we're recommending being done, we don't have that data, and we're just going to continue to respond to these on a one-off basis and expend the money that we're currently expending as a result of what's taking place.
So this is a study that GHD is going to take for us, and I'm looking at her conclusions, talking about staff are recommending that the required studies be undertaken on Norfolk County gas wells, and then it talks about strong justification for the single source exemption to the purchasing policy being sought. So are we going to have them looking around and seeing what's happening with some of those wells, or is this when a well creates problems?
Through the chairman to council, this is a proactive desktop review. They're not going to be doing physical inspections of every well. That they're going to be reviewing it, checking the status of all of the wells, what the current is, what the history is, whether or not they've leaked in the past. It's all of that. It's information gathering. They will not be physically going out to the wells and inspecting a well. This is, again, the science behind it, not the actual physical work associated with it, and staff will not be recommending that Norfolk County engage in the physical responsibility for any of these wells.
So will that come out of what the work that they're doing under the, does that come out of the 30,000 or 50,000? Or is this another fund that we have somewhere to do this?
Through the chairman to council, I'm going to look to the treasurer to answer how much of the original amount remains, or actually maybe Ms. Miranda can answer that. So I'm not sure how much in addition we're going to require.
Thank you. Through the chair, as of September the 2nd, the costing was at about $27,000, and we should receive the final costing this week. We're going to guesstimate that we're probably around the 40,000-ish number.
Okay, for now, thank you.
Okay. Councillor Oliver, one of your two timers now.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll only ask to use the first one for sure. When I read the report, and Ms. Robinson has acknowledged this same thing, I read at least two different spots in this brief report where staff point out that it is not our responsibility to be doing this kind of work. And because of that, I share the same concerns that Councillor Brunton does. I guess I also have some fear, Mr. Chair, if we do agree to do this study, that by default, we will somehow be associated as an organization, as a municipality, with solving this problem. And in that sense, therefore, almost taking on some of the responsibility that we all acknowledge is that of the M&R at the present time. And so I'm afraid I'm not going to be able to support the motion if it does get a mover and seconder to undertake this work. But I will mention, Mr. Chair, if for whatever reason this motion should fail, then I'm prepared to put one on the table that we request directly that the M&R undertake an assessment of the abandoned wells within this county, of which there are many. We know there's some 1,500, I think it says in the report or in the GHD scope of work document. And that, I think, is the approach we should take. Thank you.
You're quite welcome. Councillor Columbus.
I share the thoughts around the table here of Councillor Brunton's and Councillor Oliver's. And we know from the GHD report, 1,613 wells, or 17% of the wells in Ontario are located in Norfolk County. So I think when you read the GHD report, it talks about province-wide kind of study. It doesn't just focus on Norfolk. And so why would we be asking GHD, Lee, to give us work across the province? It should be the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry that should cough up the dollars to pay for something like that.
Certainly. Through the chairman to council, the program that the MNRF currently has and administers is province-wide. It's not localized to Norfolk County. Staff believe, and the reason that we're recommending this is that we believe that the current program that the MNRF has is inadequate to address the situation. So we're not asking for specific well information. We're asking GHD to review the program that the MNRF currently, the reactive program that the MNRF currently has in place, because we believe that program is inadequate to address the situation that's happening. So we're not looking for them to give us specific information on our wells. This isn't going to result in this well is bad, this well is good. This is going to result in an overall recommendation for changes to the program so that this goes forward on a proactive basis instead of we get a phone call from either the MNRF or the MOECC that says there's a huge smell of hydrogen sulfide in the area and we're very concerned. The idea is that the program is inadequate, and the purpose of this is to identify the inadequacies in the program so that we're able to take something forward similar to what Councillor Oliver had suggested with respect to the MNRF, saying, here, we've looked at it, your program isn't working, that's why we want you to do this, as opposed to simply, can you please look at it? We're looking for the science behind why we want the MNRF to actually do these reviews.
So should we not be trying to sell this to MNRF to pay for this study? That's my thinking. Because it's not only going to help Norfolk, it's going to help Haldimand and all the other counties that have gas wells. Thanks.
The county manager wishes to speak to that, Councillor Columbus, if that's all right, and the two speakers I still have you on.
To be abundantly clear, and only County Council can determine whether a $30,000 to $50,000 study will provide adequate value to the Norfolk taxpayer, working towards the goal we've identified. It is our collective opinion as your staff that without this report gives us the data and the business case, if you will, to go forward with very specific targeted asks to the province of Ontario. That at the moment, and for decades, the province of Ontario has already had this as a jurisdiction and as a responsibility, but frankly, it's not meeting a reasonable standard. And that this data allows us to speak as civil servant to civil servant and as organization to organization, and would give us a basis to prove a case rather than simply to make what respectfully would amount to a sort of a public and political ask or appeal. We'd have a firm basis upon which to say, you need a targeted spend, specifically in Norfolk County, because we're having a disproportionate number of wells that need servicing, that you have been servicing. We have no proof, no data of that either. But to be able to justify why we need a change in behavior, a change in public spending from a specific government ministry. And it's our collective opinion that without that data, we can certainly put in the ask, absolutely. It costs nothing to send a letter, we agree. Nevertheless, the likely success of that venture would be greatly diminished without the evidentiary basis. And frankly, an evidentiary basis is how the province of Ontario makes most of its decisions.
Thank you. All right, Councillor Height, you are on now, please.
Thank you, Chairman Wells. Through you to Ms. Robinson. So basically, this is a desktop exercise from GHD. So will the GIS data then be uploaded to Norfolk County GIS system with specifics regarding the wells?
Through the Chairman to Council, we have much of that data already available. The current well numbers and locations currently available on our GIS system. So I'm not sure what, they're doing a program review. So when they review the program, any wells that they come across through their exercises that aren't currently in our system most certainly would be added to our system. But I would say that our GIS system is currently quite well populated with the current well locations and numbers.
Okay, thank you for that. And next, I guess I was up around, Forestry Farm and McDowell Road yesterday, north of there, further up than usually. And there was a huge stench of sulfur coming from there, enough to make my eyes water in my truck with the windows down. Are we playing whack-a-mole over there again?
Through the Chairman to Council, we were made aware of that issue yesterday, and we have had people out there. Staff were extremely concerned that we were going to be playing whack-a-mole, which is why we had brought forward this report with the recommendation. At this point, I'm not sure that we have any additional updated information, other than we were aware and we were doing some readings in the area.
Okay, thank you. So, seeing as how right now we're playing whack-a-mole, trying to put out these things where they pop up, why wouldn't we take our time and send this out for tender and bring this into our operating budget or capital budget? What's the sense of urgency here if we're not actually going out and looking at the wells?
Through the Chairman to Council, we could certainly bring it forward as part of the budget if Council wishes. Staff believe that we are going to be playing a game of whack-a-mole, and the sooner that we have the evidence, hopefully the shorter their time span is that we'll be playing the game.
But if we have the GIS data, we know the locations where the mole is likely to pop up next, do we not? In that central area, it's definitely not going to happen in Normandale when we're having the issue up here.
Through the Chairman to Council, there's over 200 wells in that area.
Ms. Miranda, did you wish to make a comment? No? Okay. The speakers list is down now to Councillor Brunton, followed by Councillor Black.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just, and Lee, I'm not picking on you or Mr. Cribbs that wrote the report, I believe, if I'm correct. Councillor Oliver took the words out of my mouth. I think Mayor Luke should be writing a letter addressing this to the province, that it's their problem. It is their problem, and address it. And if there was another problem there yesterday, phone them up, tell them to come back and look after things. That's their job to look after it. As far as the records you referred to in your dialogue there a few minutes ago, I'm sure the province knows when all these gas wells were dug, how deep they were. They do that with water wells when you dig a water well, and I'm sure they do that with all the gas wells. They should have all that data. And for us to go out and try and collect it all again the way you described it, to me, it's a waste of money. They should have enough data. The bottom line is, if they leak, it's their problem. And I would hope that with a letter to the premier down there, that she gets on the ball and gets somebody up here, and if there's more leaks, deal with them. But I'm tired of us. What happens if we grow tobacco here? Are we going to do a study on lung cancer because people smoke around here, and send it off to the province and say, hey, we think we want to be prepared when people get lung cancer? It just doesn't make sense to me that we're going to go ahead and spend 50 grand possibly on something that is not our responsibility. Thank you.
Councillor Black.
I just wondered if there'd be any value. We just talked about our association that we pay fees to, the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, and whether or not there'd be any value in bringing them on board if there are other problems throughout the province, that maybe they could put our case forward to us. Maybe we should be communicating with them to do that. I don't know if staff have any insights into that, whether Lee or there'd be any value, or a county manager could speak to that.
I'll ask the county manager if he would speak to that, please.
In my interactions with AMO over the course of my career, it's become abundantly clear to me that the organization, I have no right to speak for it, but that as a default, it prefers to engage in items that it knows are absolutely of interest to all of its membership. So it'll talk about fire departments because all 444 of us have fire departments, for instance. It'll talk about codes of conflict or elected, because we all have elected officials, etc. I don't know if we'd certainly be happy to send correspondence to AMO and make that request if that's the will of council, but I don't know if the location of the wells are enough to justify, to trip AMO's threshold to involve enough of its membership. It doesn't like to address regional items. That's for regional organizations more as opposed to AMO, and I can't give you a straight answer as to whether this would be enough to hit the threshold, but it's not self-evidently enough to hit the threshold.
I guess, and maybe to Lee, it sounds like maybe we're a little unique in how many gas wells we have, and that other areas really don't have as many as we do. I wonder if Lee would know that answer?
Through the mayor to council, I can't speak, I didn't review based on municipality how many wells are located in each municipality. So I do know that we have a disproportionate number of wells in Norfolk County based on our population and size.
I guess, Mr. Chairman, all I would say is that as staff feel that it's of value to communicate with AMO, that maybe they can either do that or advise us to direct them to do so.
Thank you. Are you wishing to speak, or?
If I may, if it's the will of council to engage a collection of municipalities, the ROMA, the Rural Ontario Municipal Association, which is sort of a subset of AMO, if you will, and has its meeting in January, that would be an appropriate forum, because although I agree with Ms. Robinson, we're disproportionate. Certainly, I come here from Lambton County, which has oil springs and petroleum, considers itself the birthplace of the oil industry. They have a lot of wells through Chatham-Kent and through Elgin. I understand it has something to do with our proximity to Lake Erie and then to the southwest near southeast corner of Lake Huron, although I'm not a geologist. So those are all rural areas, and Roma might be a reasonable forum.
I don't know, to leave it in staff's hands if you feel it, deem it appropriate, that it's of value to Norfolk County to bring another group in, then
Well, let's see where the motion goes, and then we'll deal with that. Well, let's continue with the debate here. We have two other speakers, Councillor Geisens, followed by Councillor Columbus, please. Not that what you're saying isn't important, by the way. Go ahead, Councillor Geisens.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The question is, when there was a gas well, I guess somebody drilled the gas well, was M&R or MOE, whoever at the time, would they not have had some kind of either saying, yeah, you can drill there, or even the driller would have to indicate as to where it is and everything like that. So it's the same thing with a water well. I mean, you have a water well, you've got to send the paperwork into the M&R. So theoretically, would they not know, and don't they have some kind of, I guess, a priority to do something because they knew where it's happening, and yet when it comes to having a problem, we have to fix it, not the province. And as far as I'm concerned, I think it's the province that needs to fix this, not us. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you wish to respond?
Certainly, through the chairman to council, Councillor Geisens is correct that now you need to report all of the well drilling to the Ministry of Environment and Climate Change. Unfortunately, many of the gas wells were put in place before mandatory reporting was necessary. So there is not an accurate, 100% accurate record. Eventually that will obviously phase out, but as it stands right now, many of the gas wells that we are undertaking that are causing us some concern are not part of the old record system because it was not required to be reported.
Thank you. Councillor Columbus.
Yes, Mr. Chairman,